season of the most standout and well-penned Tom Baker stories, The Pyramids of Mars. The Marcus Scarman, played by Bernard Archard, who we shall call Markman, shows a love of all historians in his magnificent find. All of this stands on a good grounding to let us into his pathologically fractured noggin. There is an amazing pad of the way in which the future development of the narrative goes here. After the catastrophes of the first scene in the dig, we are introduced to the TARDIS and its occupants speeding around the vortex. That was only when the relative I can't even say the bloody word. Relative continuum stabilizer failed. That we get a glimpse into the true genius of the BBC SFX department of the age. The realisation that a temporal reverse in the stabiliser circuits has left them landing in Unit HQ rounders before it was established ends in the bake dock and Sarah hopping out the police box into the storeroom of the old priory and the military org was originally built on. Namin is a legal representative of Scarman, or let's call it Markman, as we shall call the geezer. In Blighty, he exemplifies all that I can't even say the fuck, it's too early in the morning. Colonialism has attributed to the Egyptian importation of antiquities at this point in history. His arrogance is a firm display in his negotiations with Dr. Warlock, an old friend of Markman's. Comic relief being the butler, Collins. Played by Michael Bilton, Collins has played a lightweight performance here, in which he is well tailored for. Under the circs, the Bake Doc and Sarah decide they'll leave the storeroom via the window. But the Stargroves estate was pocketed at the time by Mick Jagger and used in a later story, The Image of the Fendal. Not so much a far cry from the original plan of attack in the narratives to have the entire story set in the British Museum. An expense too far? Which is why Lewis G was told to rewrite with Holmes, presumably. Now, as the Bake Doc and Co. make their merry, or not so merry, if you consider Warlock's hole, along the run-down sunken gardens in Stargroves, it is a necessary stopping point. But Namin's devotion is samey of the Victorian and Edwardian fascination with the occult and death, together with the new sciences. The story lent on its mythology splendidly. And they meet up with Lawman, who helps them back to the lodge. The Bake Doc states in typical Tom Baker fashion, enigmatic fashion indeed, it's all far too big to involve the peelers, he insists. Something is interfering with time, Mr. Scarman, and time is my business.
You're weird.
The Bake Doc is so enthused in this little piece of Technocotica that he begs Lawman to give him a good old demo, as the thing explodes on receiving a message from who knows where. The resounding might of Tom Baker's words almost resonate around the small lodge set. Namin is already locked into resurrecting the great Sutek. Namin boils from the inside out, cringing from the touch of the emissary as it secures Namin's collarbone to dust. As the emissary turns after his murder to transform with good transitioning effects into the visage of Prof. Marcus Scarman. I'm messing up all the sequential events here.
You're only making it worse for yourself.
Markman crashes into his brother Lodge to confront a bemused war doc. Reflects the ideological feud with the ancient Egyptians between Set and Osiris. This spilled into the story describing the antagonists coming from Vesta Osiris. This is where it can get confusing.
And there shall be a great confusion as to where things really are. And nobody will really know where lieth those little things with the sort of raffia work base.
An outstanding performance is highlighted when Lawman is hauled inside the TARDIS after Markman snails back into the storeroom with mumbots in tow. Every event in history has its alternative, a concept to be revisited in New Who somewhat frequently and introduced into the wider lore as fixed points in time that cannot be altered. Bait Doc checks out the rocket and sits in the stable yard of the Priory, and we are told that it is an Osiran war missile. Pyramid power. Lawman pipes up. He mentions that it might be better to destroy the angular missile using blasting gel from Clemence's shed at the other side of the wood. The Baked Doc and Sarah try to get in whilst pondering the question of how dangerous Sutekh is yet again. All this preface is dripping with drama but irritating in that it's historically inaccurate. It is noteworthy that in their twosome the Time Lords are mentioned as not being able to chivvy the Osiran, showing for the first time that the Gallifreyans do have limitations, Achilles' heel. It is not until the Time War in the new series that we see how severe those heels can be, though the regular audience does get an idea when it comes to Season 18's E-Space trilogy with the introduction of the Great Vampire Wars. Back at Lawman's Lodge, the Edwardian is so busy with the unravelling of the protective wrappings around the mummy droids that he almost fails to notice his own brother walks in through the door. He ends up killing his own bro, Lawman. It's probably one of the most tragic scenes that could have been written for the show at the time, and Bait Doc reasserts that he did say that he shouldn't have been. Not until Tenant Doc do we see such a cognitive disassociation effect. I think the story Waters of Mars comes immediately to mind. The plucky assistant misses the actual jelly when she is given the opportunity to fire, but it turns out that Sutekh is holding back the explosion by mental force. Well, that's a handy trick if you're on the front line, I suppose.
Normal procedure, Lieutenant, is to jump 200 feet into the air and scatter yourself over a wide area.
Bake Doc strides off in a huff. His only alternative to take down the god is to distract his concentration. Now it's here we get established in our noggin the overpowering control that this mythology actually has on the space tale. Bake Doc is hypnotised into doing Sutekh's will in controlling the symbiotic TARDIS. Although it was later established on social media that it's not in fact symbiotic at all. Again, that's big finish for you. As Sarah drops to her knees and weeps at the Bake Doc death, puzzles litter the script at this point that would put the Crystal Maze to shame and make the adventure game look more dated than it actually does. A large tube covers Sarah, just appearing around her out of nowhere. It's all very well utilised that Holmes uses one of the old Ulysses puzzle to engage a young audience here with a double question riddle thing going on. Although the way in which Markman is disposed of by Sutekh's mind control once the Eye of Horus is destroyed it's a trifle below par, I think. The biggest disappointment being that the Eye was originally meant to be a recurring theme throughout the series from this point onwards. So the Eye has to be destroyed. But the destruction was almost like curry powder, just like dissolving into a sea of honey. Baked Doc is equally jarring in his response. But the resentment of all this is seen in Sutak, and his helmet is given to disappear, revelling his badly executed SFX dog-like features. That Baked Doc has a MacGuffin prop in his hand. It looks suspiciously like a repurposed Cyberman chess unit from the previous season. As the Baked Doc banishes him down the tea time corridor for eternity, the tension sits on a knife edge. A thermal balance apparently had equalised, causing the fire to break out in the Priory, and they dash for the TARDIS with flames lapping around them. One last historical reference is made as the Baked Doc mentions he doesn't want to get blamed for starting the fire again as he did in 1666. Ancient Egyptians called Set the Typhonian beast. We have to have the irony that the events in the fateful Priory gave rise to such life-affirming change.
It is symbolic of our struggle against oppression. Symbolic of his struggle against reality.
And we look at the astounding performance of Liz Sladen. Sarah Jane's fortitude throughout resonates with the audience in a pinnacle of her time as a companion. Humanity that was at stake, all leading back to the sequences in the TARDIS. What we have to remember is that this story is an all-rounder and highly acclaimed, quite rightly so. Give us a good clicking, and I'll see you later.
Shakanaka.